Looking for some digital magic to help you through your week? The Kingdom Report is here for you, covering the latest Disneyland and Disney World news, experiences, and events. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Kingdom Report Live so you never miss an update. And drop a subscribe on the Kingdom Report YouTube channel for new videos every week. Don't miss out. Join this growing community of theme park fans as we aim to connect you to more of what makes you happy. For more information, visit KingdomReportLive.com. And now, back to the magic.
Remember those carefree days of childhood where the magic still existed? When you didn't feel guilty about eating mountains of cereal with, we'll just say, questionable nutrition? Well, now you can have your cereal and you can eat it too. Because Magic Spoon has re-engineered that same great taste with grown-up ingredients for an absolutely game-changing Cereal 2.0. I adore cereal. I treasure cereal. It's one of my favorite things to eat, but I just can't justify eating mounds of sugar in every bowl. I don't need to worry about that with Magic Spoon, because it's high protein, low carb, and 0 grams of sugar in each serving. I know, it's hard to believe, but it also comes in 6 delicious flavors: frosted, fruity, cocoa, cinnamon, blueberry, and peanut butter. Plus, they've got limited edition flavors released throughout the year, like gingerbread or peaches and cream. So taste that magic of childhood all over again and get yourself some Magic Spoon cereal. Plus, take $5 off your order at checkout. All you got to do is insert the promo code Kingdom Team. That's right, Kingdom Team at checkout will get you $5 off your next order at MagicSpoon.com. That's MagicSpoon.com. Promo code Kingdom Team. Disney News Talk Live, a special edition of News Talk because there's a lot to talk about. How's it going, everybody? Wait for the Kingdom Report. Back with you once again. It is a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday to be with you. Certainly a lot happening in the Disney universe, and Bob Chapek just has not had a good month, has he? The Disney CEO is going through an awful lot right now and continues to, well, we'll just say, handle things his own way. And that is leading to some really, troubling and tumultuous times within the organization. No doubt with Bob Iger, the last CEO and executive chairman by his final days. No doubt with Bob Iger on his way out last December. Who could have imagined that this quickly, now already March of the following year, that so much would be happening and so many scandals, so many different botched PR campaigns, so many things would have already occurred by this point. But hey, here we are, and we are going to cover it all for you. This broadcast is all about your opinion, your Disney parks, your Disney experiences in general, everything that you have on your mind. That's what this is that is what this show is all about, rather. It is dedicated to presenting your perspective, your opinions, your experiences. That is the whole concept of News Talk. Yeah, we're here to talk about the news, especially your opinion. Let's keep it civil today. I know that a lot of what we are going to be covering does deal with some hotly contested political things, and since politics runs every aspect of our lives now, and we just can't get away from it, always hesitant to dive into these conversations and dive into these various topics, but certainly they are important topics that are affecting the Disney community right now, and therefore it is worth certainly conversing about and covering for the sake of making sure that we get everything on record, because this is a wild time, to be sure, at the Walt Disney Company. So please keep it respectful if you are in our live chat, if you are somebody that is joining into the conversation. We appreciate you being here, we really do. However, we do want to warn everybody that because these topics do tend to get controversial and do tend to become rather intense, keep your cool, will you? All right, we're all human beings. We're all here with our various perspectives. It's time to respect each other and just make sure that if you are putting your perspective out there, that you're not trying to shut somebody else down for the sake of their perspective, okay? So again, let's be respectful about it. And right out of the gate, we do like to remind everybody here that if you are a viewer, if you are a listener, if you are somebody that, whether you're watching live or after the fact on demand, we'd love to reward you. That's what we do here. We reward you for watching our broadcasts. And how do we do it? Well, I will show you. It's one thing we do in particular on almost every live broadcast. We give away a Kingdom Report mug. That's right, a coveted Kingdom Report mug. And you too can be the owner of a Kingdom Report mug. All you gots to do is leave the comment that has the phrase that pays this week. The phrase that pays is the comment you will leave underneath this very video on our YouTube channel. It has to be on the YouTube channel, the Kingdom Report on YouTube. You leave the comment underneath this video. After the live video posts, go ahead, leave the comment with the phrase that pays. Phrase that pays this week is none other than Disney Parks Magic. That's right, Disney Parks Magic is the phrase that pays this week. As long as you leave that comment underneath this video following the live broadcast, you, my friends, will be entered to win your very own Kingdom Report mug. If you are the winner, we will be reaching out to you and asking, hey, what color do you like most? And where can we send one of these beautiful mugs? Because we got it coming your way. Oh, yes, we do. It means so much, by the way, to have your listening ear and to be a part of your week. And therefore, you do have 2 days in which to leave this comment underneath our video after the live video posts. Disney Parks Magic. So, today, when the live video happens, it is the 22nd. You have until the 24th. That's Thursday, the 24th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So between the 22nd and the 24th at 8 a.m. Pacific time this Thursday, leave the comment Disney Parks Magic in the comment section below, and you got yourself your very own Kingdom Report mug if you are selected at random. So I wish you all lots of luck, and no doubt the Force will indeed be with you. Yes, yes. All right, hey, with the mug discussion out of the way, I think it's important to ask a couple of questions of you first and foremost. First of all, tell me, do you happen to have a Disney Parks vacation planned this year? If so, when? Have you already been to a Disney park this year? What'd you think? How was the experience? What's going on? If you're going later this year, what season are you going? How long will you be there? And which parks are you going to? You going to Disney World? You going to Disneyland? Do you have something planned out this year, especially as masking guidelines have been relaxed and so much has gone by the wayside in terms of restrictions? it's more comfortable than ever to be back at the Disney parks. This past weekend, the Food and Wine Festival at Disney California Adventure was rocking and rolling. What a busy place to be. Lots of fun, to be sure. If you have not checked it out, please do so here on the Kingdom Report YouTube channel. Check out our Disneyland update. We're covering a lot of things going on across the Disneyland Resort right now, including some of the offerings at the Food and Wine Festival that you might not know about. But I have to say, having experienced it firsthand, the Disneyland Resort right now feeling more normal than ever. I absolutely cherish the fact that things are finally starting to feel normal again. So, at any rate, tell me, leave it in our comments section, whether you're watching via Facebook Live or YouTube. Do you have a Disney Parks vacation plan this year? If so, when you got that trip planned? Tell me about it. I want to hear from you. Because there's so much to talk about today, as the title indicates here. There is a war between Bob Iger and Bob Chapek. Did you even know that? Well, yeah, it turns out that there was quite the battle before Iger departed, and it sounds like there is still quite the rift between the two. I don't know about you. I sure felt this in my gut. I felt that there was tension. I knew it in my gut that there was a problem. I could tell there was a problem based on how Iger would skirt the discussion topics of Chapek in interviews. I pay attention to what people say. All right, maybe it's the newsman in me. I don't know, but I pay attention to what people are saying at any given time. And I have to tell you, fascinating to say the least, that Bob Iger went as long as he did. You know, he's a classy guy. He doesn't air his dirty laundry or anything like that. But a recent story came out showcasing that Bob Iger, as well as Bob Chapek, clashed a little bit there towards the end and continue to have a rift to this very day. And no doubt it has only been exacerbated by a lot of the things that have been happening within the last month in particular, whereas Bob Iger has been very vocal on social media about the Florida legislation, and Disney's inaction to start out with has no doubt led a lot of people to go, well, what the heck? I thought you stood for certain things. I thought you supported certain things, Disney. How come you didn't even speak out? All in which it sounds like Bob Chapek was attempting to not be political. So this is how I've read it so far. Turns out Disney CEO Bob Chapek thought it wasn't valuable to. I almost feel bad for him in this respect, because I think he was trying to avoid conflict. He was trying to avoid controversy, and he totally misstepped. So I guess, he gets paid enough. I don't have to feel bad for him. He's a professional. He's a leader. He's somebody that's very important in the business world. He has an entire team of think tank people that are dedicated to this sort of thing. You know what? I guess I don't feel bad. But at any rate, he was trying not to be controversial, and therefore didn't release a statement, at least according to him, because he felt like corporate statements really don't matter in the long run. They really don't do anything. They really don't move the needle. They really don't impact change, which I guess to a certain degree that is true. I mean, you see corporate statements released all the time. Does it really do much to move the political needle all that much? Probably not, but it is something that he mentioned, and he was basically saying, I was trying to avoid the controversy, and what do you know, this backfired big time. It blew up in his face, and he just continues to step in it, and continues to trip himself up, and continues to also say the wrong things in this process, and it's very troubling, whereas no doubt the entirety of the diversity and inclusion program that was created over the last 2 decades at Disney is one of the most award-winning and exquisite programs in existence. It's something that, having been a part of the organization for, over a dozen years like I was, you definitely felt included. You felt like there was an inclusive environment. You definitely felt that diversity was respected and appreciated within Disney. It was a very safe space for everybody to come, just like it is for guests. It was very much that way for cast members. And unfortunately, all of that goodwill, 2 decades of goodwill, have now turned into a burn to the ground situation. A burn to the ground stack of goodwill disintegrated into thin air. No longer something that many Disney employees feel good about. I know that there are many Disney cast members who aren't even proud to work for the organization anymore because of this misstep and because of this miscalculation and because of the lack of action on behalf of the executive team. So definitely a major culture shift within the Disney company, a seismic shift, if you will, within the Disney organization. There is a lot still to come on this, and we will definitely touch on it. We do have a story coming up discussing today's walkouts that happened across the divisions within the organization. Yes, employees walked out today of various locations across the Walt Disney Company. And in addition to that, we're also going to be sharing with you a little bit about how Disney is postponing their management retreat. Probably a good call. Disney's postponing their management retreat for the sake of trying to handle this mess. So Bob Chapek and the executives are deciding to, maybe we'll take a step back. Maybe we'll be a little bit more calm, and maybe we'll go to great lengths to try and fix what we've created here, this disastrous mess, and upsetting such a large demographic of Disney cast members. So at any rate, a lot of stories to get to, no doubt, a lot of things to share with you here today. But I'm very glad that you could all join us, and certainly very happy that you, my friends, can be a part of the discussion today. As always, leave your comments here, share your thoughts, because that is what Disney News Talk Live is all about. Whether you're watching live or on demand afterwards, leave your comments for us. Your perspective does matter. And I asked you just a second ago if you had any trips planned for Disney parks this year. Oh, please says, possibly in a trip in December, but the way Disney is treating its guests, I'm on the fence. Oh, please, we had a video not too long ago here on this channel that talked about whether or not the magic is lost. And it was a terrific opinion piece that we showcased that really dug into whether or not, due to all the upcharges and due to the way Disney is sort of treating the consumer at the moment, is it something that still feels as magical? Is the magic lost entirely? Is there still some magic there? Are you being pushed in one direction? Do you feel like you need to invest in a Disney trip anytime soon? Or are you ready to just say, no, I'm gonna wait and see what happens, and maybe I'll be back in a couple of years? We appreciate you, oh please, for chiming in there. Cyber Drawn says, have a 3-day reservation at Disneyland and DCA. Very nice. I like hearing that. I hope you have a great time. Cobra Commander says, I probably won't go back till Chapek is fired and prices drop. Well, all right. There's that. And Jeffrey says, going to Walt Disney World next week for the opening of All Star Sports. Jeffrey, let us know what you think. Let us know if All Star Sports is spruced up, if it's looking good, shiny, and fresh. That is one of those resorts that just goes through hell when it comes to the commanding crowds, and certainly the cheer groups, and like all the kid groups tend to stay at the All-Stars, don't they? Let us know what you think, especially if things look spick and span, especially as they're opening up. And I know that the All-Star resorts in general, especially with the recent remodel of the All-Star resorts here in past years, the rooms are significantly nicer, although they lack a lot of, I guess we'll call it, the charm that the old All-Star resorts have. Now, these rooms are kind of starting to look alike, but they are very clean, fresh, and vibrant to a certain degree. So let us know what you think of All-Star Sports when you get back. Would love to hear from you. D. McGee says, I will be spending a day at Animal Kingdom before my first Disney cruise in May. Oh, a Disney cruise. How lovely. And a day at Animal Kingdom is always a good time. Gotta love that. Nick chimes in saying, next month traveling from Bangkok to Disney World. Well, that is wonderful. And I happen to know a thing or two about Bangkok. I saw The Hangover. Yeah, I saw Hangover 2. It was something. And let me tell you, I don't know if I ever want to visit. It's pretty frightening. But yeah, no, it's a great place. And if you've never seen Hangover 2, it's a must. Cinematic masterpiece, to say the least, that's for sure. JP says, I've already been this year. I went to Disneyland, and it was awesome. Very nice. Love hearing that. Matt says, the only time I went to Disney was in Paris, and that was in 2005. Oh, it's been a while, hasn't it? Yes. And Dwayne says, early June, 2 weeks at Walt Disney World. Well, Dwayne, where are you staying at? Are you going to be on property? Are you going to be off property? Would love to hear from you on that. Paul says, I will in August. You'll be at Disneyland. Very nice. Jeffrey is leaving next week. Very good. And Nico says, I'm going to Disneyland Resort in May, my first trip since 1996. Nico, things have changed a little bit. You might want to prepare yourself. Now, you're definitely going to be seeing a lot of things that were not there in 1996. So I hope you have prepared yourself and you have plenty of days in which to spend at the Disneyland Resort. Paul says, evening, Wade. Yeah, evening, Paul. By gosh golly, I hope you're having a terrific Tuesday. Very good. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I do think that we need to jump on in to our first story. And today, we are going to share with you exactly what's been happening between Bob Iger and Bob Chapek, the clash of the titans. Good God, prepare yourself for this. It's a story that many haven't heard until now. It is something that, like I said, I kind of had in the pit of my stomach, an inkling about. I kind of thought maybe there was something to it. Always trust your intuition. That's what my mama always told me. And yeah, looks like I was onto something here. The truth has come out, and there is some real tension and a real clash between these two. The story can be a little lengthy, so I appreciate you bearing with us, but there is a lot of meat on this bone. Let's dive in. The following lengthy write-up comes to us from MSN.com. They report that April 12th, 2020, that's the day former Disney CEO Bob Iger's relationship with his hand-picked successor, current Disney CEO Bob Chapek, began to fall apart. Iger had stunned the world in February of that year by resigning as Disney's chief executive, effective immediately. He elevated Chapek, whom Iger and the board had long seen internally as the frontrunner for the position given his operational experience and decades at the company. Iger would stick around as executive chairman and direct the company's creative endeavors to help with the transition. Timing of a CEO change at arguably the world's most famous entertainment company couldn't have been worse. Just weeks after Iger stepped down, Disney began closing its theme parks around the world during the initial stages of the COVID-19 quarantine. Iger and Chapek seemed to be ready for the pandemic challenge together. Quote, I can't think of a better person to succeed me in this role, Iger said March 11, 2020, during the company's annual shareholder meeting a day before the company announced it would begin closing its parks. And Chapek returned the optimism, saying, quote, I've watched Bob Iger lead this company to amazing new heights, and I've learned an enormous amount from that experience. 1 month after those comments, with everyone stuck at home, then New York Times media columnist Ben Smith published a story after reaching Iger by email. He reported Iger wasn't going to turn Chapek to the wolves as a brand new CEO while the world was falling apart. Iger told Smith he would stick around to help run the company. Quote, a crisis of this magnitude and its impact on Disney would necessarily result in my actively helping Bob Chapek and the company contend with it, particularly since I ran the company for 15 years, Iger said in his email. Chapek was furious when he saw the story, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. He had not expressed a need or desire for extra help. He wasn't looking for a white knight. Iger had postponed his retirement as CEO 3 times already. Chapek felt he was essentially doing it again, leaving him as hapless second banana, according to people familiar with his thoughts. Chapek was already reporting to Iger, the board's chairman, anyway. The Disney board had little interest in starting a brawl, especially given the state of the company and the world, the people said. 3 days after Smith's story was published, Disney accelerated its timeline and named Chapek to its board. Quote, it was a turning point moment, said one of the people familiar with Chapek's reaction to Iger's interview with Smith. Since that incident, Iger and Chapek haven't been able to mend their relationship, according to about a dozen people familiar with the matter who spoke to CNBC for this story. The people asked to remain anonymous because the relationship and discussions about it are private. In the months that followed, Chapek began making key decisions about Disney's future, including a dramatic reorganization of the company and outing actress Scarlett Johansson's salary following a dispute over her Marvel movie Black Widow, without Iger's input. Internal messages about business strategy from both men would sometimes conflict, as it became clear the executives weren't speaking with one voice, several people noted. While much of the public narrative has centered around Iger's long goodbye, he departed as chairman in January. Chapek, 61, has actually been firmly in control of Disney for more than 18 months. Normal times would have allowed Iger and Chapek to work more closely. Instead, the two executives barely spoke to each other. Chapek has a small circle of close confidants with whom he makes major decisions. Longtime right-hand man Kareem Daniel, Chief of Staff Arthur Bochner, and, to some degree, Chief Financial Officer Christine McCarthy, whom Iger promoted to the role in 2015, according to people familiar with the matter. Iger hasn't been part of that circle. Late last year, just weeks before his departure as executive chairman, Iger threw himself a going-away party, inviting more than 50 people at his house in Brentwood, a suburban Los Angeles neighborhood. He spoke at length about his time at Disney in front of the crowd. Chapek attended, but there was little interaction between the two men, according to people who attended the party. Guests, including Disney veterans, executives, and on-camera talent, such as broadcasters Robin Roberts, David Muir, and Al Michaels, sat at two long tables at Iger's house. Iger and Chapek sat at opposite tables. Chapek sat near several of his direct reports, including Daniel. Iger sat next to film director and mogul Steven Spielberg. While Iger spent about 10 minutes publicly praising former colleagues, he barely mentioned Chapek, said the people. Quote, "It was extremely awkward," said one of the guests, who asked to remain anonymous because the party was private, saying the tension was palpable. Both Iger and Chapek declined to comment on their relationship with each other. Chapek's decision to move away from Iger showed chutzpah, but it also put him on an island against a Disney icon who also happened to be the chairman of his company and a large shareholder. He also hasn't been able to benefit from the myriad relationships Iger developed from decades at Disney. Anyone succeeding Iger, who had been Disney's CEO since 2005, is going to have a difficult time filling his shoes. Iger was generally beloved by Hollywood and highly respected as a CEO, particularly after orchestrating a series of intellectual property acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm, which will likely go down in media history as three of the smartest deals ever. Iger, age 71, has even flirted with running for president of the United States. Chapek, meanwhile, has a harder exterior and at times, according to his colleagues, struggles with emotional intelligence, which happens to be Iger's strength. The differences between the executives' leadership styles have come to light quickly in Chapek's tenure. Disney's public spat last year with Johansson over compensation after Black Widow streamed on Disney Plus at the same time it hit theaters during the pandemic embarrassed Iger, who prided himself on smooth relationships with A-list talent. While the controversy happened under Chapek's watch as CEO, Iger was still chairman and working with creative talent. This month, Chapek's public acknowledgement that he let Disney employees down by not fighting harder against Florida's Parental Rights and Education bill has been another reminder to Iger loyalists that Disney's brand may be at risk with Chapek at the helm. Weeks before, Iger took a public stance against the legislation. The messy execution has angered Disney employees. Deadline reported it spoke with several longtime Disney employees who said Chapek's handling of the situation led to, quote, "the worst week they've ever had working at the company," close quote. Several Disney employees have called Iger in recent weeks to express their disappointment in Chapek, according to two people familiar with the matter. Chapek met with creative leaders at Disney earlier this month to hear their concerns about the response to the bill, CNBC previously reported. Perhaps the biggest division between Chapek and Iger was a more mundane one: Chapek's decision to remove so-called profit and loss, or P&L power, from many of Disney's veteran division leaders and consolidate all of that control under Daniel. While public controversies generate headlines, it's likely to be Chapek's internal changes and how successful they become that will determine his future as Disney CEO. When he became CEO, Chapek went on a listening tour of executives to find out what was working and what wasn't. He heard from both distribution and content executives that the current arrangement had become dysfunctional. Chapek decided to reverse Iger's decision to have greenlighting authority rest with the head of the streaming services. He gave that power back to content heads who have more money than ever before to make programming. Disney plans to spend a record $33 billion on content for fiscal 2022. That's largely pleased Disney's content leaders, who can now tell creators directly whether Disney will work with them, according to people familiar with the matter. But with Daniel getting P&L control, long-term Disney executives also lost the ability to run the businesses of their own divisions. Some creative leaders didn't mind, preferring to focus on making content rather than selling advertising or working on wholesale distribution agreements with pay TV providers. Others didn't appreciate their loss of control over budgets. Ideally, Chapek would like consumers to experience a more unified digital Disney experience, whether it's logging into Disney Plus or buying merchandise from the online Disney store, or managing theme park experiences with Disney Genie service, which is a kind of digital concierge. Internally, some employees formally speak of the grand challenge of unifying Disney technology and experiences as one Disney. Several current Disney executives noted that Chapek's number one priority, setting up Disney for a digital world where streaming dominates and legacy distribution models fade away, is exactly what Iger believed in. That adds an element of sorrow to the men's failed relationship. Their end goals are the same. It's possible Disney employees and the broader media and entertainment world simply get used to Chapek's method of leadership with time. Chapek clearly isn't Iger, but perhaps his biggest challenge will be convincing everyone it's okay not to be. Chapek's contract is up at the end of February 2023. Iger regrets how the change of control has transpired, one person said, but he's also not returning to Disney, he told Kara Swisher in a January interview. Quote, "I was CEO for a long time," Iger said. "You can't go home again. I'm gone." Once again, our many thanks to MSN and CNBC for putting together that fantastic in-depth story. And there you have it, a story about two CEOs, an executive chairman on his way out, and a CEO current day, who definitely do not see eye to eye on a lot of things. I need to know from all of you, because obviously this story is fascinating, and it's certainly one that is going to continue to play out, I think, over the course of the next year as Bob Chapek remains CEO until the end of his contract, and then, we'll see what happens there. But I need to know, do you think that this spat will continue to have ramifications? Do you think things are going to just get worse from here on out without an Iger sort of steering the ship and safeguarding things and having that oversight? Bob Chapek, just on his own now for a couple of months, technically speaking, there's been a lot of incidents. There have been a lot of things going on, so things have gotten a little hairy, that's for sure. But we want to hear from you. What do you think about Bob Chapek's beef with former CEO Bob Iger? If you're somebody that was a fan of Iger, and I know that there are a lot of diehard Bob Iger fans out there, completely understand why, soft-spoken, very engaging guy, has a lot of charisma, whereas Bob Chapek really has none of those things. And I think the story, even outlined there for us that when it comes down to it, emotional intelligence, that's something Bob Iger excels in. That's something Bob Chapek is not good at all. He doesn't really have that trait. It's something that he's continuing to apparently work on. But he was already unpopular before he became CEO. He was already, as the Disney Parks chairman, he was already somebody that a lot of people didn't like to begin with, and then he was selected. And I had this conversation recently with the Kingdom Report Live team, Garrett Hassel, Katrina Manzoni, Tyler Crouch, which, by the way, if you are a fan of Kingdom Report Live, our studio show, we are coming back this Saturday, March the 26th, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, live, just for you, bringing that Disney Parks news and discussion. Do not miss it. It's our first show of 2022. It is great to be back in the saddle, and there is so much to tackle. But I do know that in our conversation, myself and the team, we were discussing how Tom Staggs, who was originally the heir apparent to the CEO-ship for Bob Iger's position on the way out, I guess, because Bob Iger has now wanted to say goodbye 3 times, right? So he's had his contract extended multiple times. But Tom Staggs was a very personable, youthful guy, had kids that were loving the theme parks. They were at theme park age, really, where kids really enjoy themselves inside the parks. And he was somebody that looked after the theme parks for many years as the chairman of parks and did a fantastic job. He was a really great motivational leader. I had the opportunity to meet him on several occasions. He presented me the Walt Disney Legacy Award at one point during my career, and everybody just thought that this guy is absolutely the heir apparent to the CEO seat. And then something really weird happened. The board decided to pass on him, which was just wild. And what happened? He left. He realized, well, obviously I'm not going anywhere, right? I've hit the ceiling now. The board doesn't have faith in me for some reason. Goodbye. So he was gone. Well, the Hollywood Reporter not too long ago, I think maybe 2 or 3 months back, had a fascinating story about Tom Staggs, Bob Iger, and Bob Chapek, and alluded to the fact that Bob Chapek and his team, this is the Hollywood Reporter speaking, actively campaigned to sabotage Tom Staggs in the process of becoming CEO. Now, those are all anonymous sources, and certainly rumors can fly, and angry, negative people can get their opinions out there as being an anonymous source sometimes. It does happen. They do sleep through. But it's certainly something that adds up, at least in my estimation, as somebody that was in the organization and as somebody that understood that Tom Staggs was next in line. And then he was just gone. And the board didn't have faith all of a sudden. What happened? Tom Staggs was CFO. Tom Staggs worked with Disney for many years in a variety of positions. And he was successful in all of them too. So what happened to Tom Staggs? The Hollywood Reporter, they reached out to Tom Staggs and they asked, and he just said, no comment. I'm sure at one point, maybe he doesn't want to make waves because, believe it or not, Hollywood's a very small town, but I'm sure also that you don't want to burn a bridge in the process, and trashing, the most powerful incoming CEO is probably not a good idea, right? So it's just something that I'm sure he took a step back from and said, I'm not gonna throw my dice on this one and just see what happens. I'm gonna say no comment. But at any rate, Tom Staggs was apparently supposed to become CEO, and it was sabotaged by Bob Chapek, at least according to the Hollywood Reporter. Fascinating, if you ask me. At any rate, what do you think about Bob Chapek's beef with former CEO Bob Iger? We want to hear from you. This is all about your opinions, your perspectives, because this is Disney News Talk Live. We take your comments next. Disney News Talk Live. So great to have you with us. Hey, if you haven't done so already, we do encourage you to hit that thumbs up button. It means an awful lot to us. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I don't know what the heck you're waiting for. Make sure you are subscribed with that notification bell turned on. So anytime that we throw a little Disney news update at you, or if we have an in-park update, or any number of different types of videos or coverage, we want you to be updated ASAP. So hit that thumbs up button, hit that notification bell, make sure you're subscribed. This is the Kingdom Report. And Disney News Talk Live is all about your opinions, your Disney parks perspective. Just before the break, we were asking you about what you think regarding this big old beef between Disney CEO Bob Chapek and outgoing CEO, or outgone? Now gone? There we go. Now gone CEO Bob Iger. What did you think? What did you feel after hearing that very lengthy story about the conflict between the two? Well, we'll start out here with Dwayne. He says, unfortunately for Chapek, the CFO isn't helping the image of Disney management either. Dwayne, I got to agree with you. The CFO, Christy McCarthy, is somebody who continues to also put her foot in her mouth, rather. I'm amazed every time I hear her speak on an earnings call or in sort of a conference type setting. She just, I don't know, I don't know what she's doing, or if anybody's had a conversation with her about not being so dang, I'll call it disrespectful. I mean, she's being disrespectful to the consumer base. She's being disrespectful to guests. The things that she's saying, I don't know if she thinks she's being funny, because it's not coming off that way. And she has to realize that a lot of her quotes are coming just in pure text form. So context-wise, nobody's going to hear if she was having a certain inflection and trying to be jokey, funny, silly, saying that we're going to, minimize portions and up prices, and that'll be good for everybody's waistlines. That's, wow. How tone deaf can you be, and how disrespectful can you be as a CFO to say that publicly? Now, maybe she was just talking about, like, oh, me in general, like, oh, we can all lose weight, can't we? Haha, it's good for all of us. Again, it doesn't come out that way in text form. A quote is a quote. And sometimes a quote is damning based on what you say. And so she really, I don't know if she means to be all these things, but boy, does she also come off the wrong way all the time. So I completely agree with you. It feels like there is contempt. I've said this on a previous Disney News Talk Live. It almost feels like this executive team that's installed now, at least the more public faces, outside of, say, a Josh D'Amaro, who's very charismatic and people seem to just love, regardless of what happens in the parks. Everybody blames Bob Chapek for anything wrong in the parks, and Josh D'Amaro continues to get a pass for some reason. I've never understood that. But because he's charismatic, he's a good-looking guy, he's very, very engaging, it seems to give him a pass on all the bad things that continue to happen. And he's somebody that really does not stick his foot in his mouth very much. In fact, he seems to know what to say. He seems to know when to say certain things. Whereas the foremost executives of the company, your CFO, your CEO, just continue to do really poorly in the PR arena. And I just don't understand that, but they're not helping themselves. That's for dang sure. Whirl Omar says, I had to cancel my Disney trip because 3 times in the last 4 months, I can't afford the gas, yet my Disney annual pass money comes out every month. I understand that the gas prices continuing to rise. I believe Southern California breaking that upper $6 mark, in some places making it to $7. Yes, be terrified. Yes. That's for sure. We continue on here now with Kit Kat saying masks, testing, or the vaccines to enter Disney are against the Constitution, period. Well, private businesses were able to do what they wanted to do during this time, I guess, and so they were able to continue to restrict things as much as they wanted to. However, Disney never, at least in the theme parks here domestically, never checked for vaccines. They still don't. Masks are a thing of the past now for the most part. They are encouraging everybody to wear masks indoors. They strongly encourage it. In fact, their signage out front now says it. So thought that was interesting, but it's not something that they're enforcing. Also, testing is not something that the parks were doing. Now, Disney Cruise Line is a different story. Vaccination proof testing, all of that was a big part of Disney Cruise Line coming back, and they continue to go through all of the changes, that's for sure. We continue on here. Jeffrey says, whatever beef they have is deeper than the moment stated in the article, I'm sure. Something like that can easily be brushed away as an annoyance. Good call, Jeffrey. Thank you for that. Joy says, I'm thinking he's taking the Walt out of Disney. Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that. Certainly the warmth of Walt Disney. I think Bob Iger tried to emulate that a little bit. Bob started wearing, and I thought this was very interesting, a couple years into being CEO, he started to wear cardigans. Did anybody notice that? And to this day, he wears cardigans like Walt Disney did. And I always thought that was a really subtle change in his presentation to be more warm and to be more embracing like Walt, because Walt was known for his cardigans. So at any rate, I think you might be right. Taking the Walt out of Disney, perhaps Bob Chapek is. Thank you so much for chiming in. I appreciate that. Will Omar says, the problem is that there was no one good enough like Bob Iger to replace him with. And, I go back to this concept of Tom Staggs was next in line and carpet pulled out from under him. That's for dang sure. But it's certainly something that between him and then was it Jay Rozullo just before him, Jay Rozullo, who also went through the Parks division as chairman, who nobody liked. He was just universally disliked within the organization itself. He was turned down like immediately to move into the CEO-ship the first time. There was just an immediate disdain across, I think, even the board of directors of, no, you're not going to do this. And of course, he left too. So that was something that happened just a few years prior to Tom Staggs rising to power, that's for sure. Fred says, when you get to that level in a mega corporation like Disney, it becomes, in real life, Game of Thrones. Yes, Fred, it does. A great book, by the way. If you've never read it, you must do so. You have to read Disney War, which I know happens to be a title here of this very Disney News Talk Live, but it's reminiscent of Disney War, the book that was written by author James B. Stewart of the New York Times, who had unprecedented access to Michael Eisner during the final heyday of Michael. And I say heyday in, I guess, every sense. The final heyday meltdown, the final heyday hurrah, the final... He had unprecedented access to Michael Eisner during the very worst ending of his time at Disney, and got to witness and definitely see into a lot of what Bob Iger was experiencing firsthand, and how Michael really did not like Bob Iger and wanted to try and mold Iger. Iger wanted nothing to do with him, and how Shakespearean this entire thing was, and how there was this big fight going on between Michael Eisner and Roy Disney, the nephew, and how there was a shareholder revolt, and and how Iger was not somebody anybody wanted to promote or present or move up because they looked at him as a top lieutenant of Eisner, and in reality, he wanted nothing to do with Eisner and felt like Eisner was running the company into the ground in his final years, which was the case. Eisner kind of lost his mind there at the end. But at any rate, if you ever get a chance, James B. Stewart is the author, Disney War is the book. You must read it. It is a fascinating read for the sophisticated Disney fan, like I know you are out there. We have some of the most sophisticated, educated listeners and viewers of any YouTube channel. I firmly believe that wholeheartedly. You must read Disney War to get great context on the company's past. And I mean, it stretches all the way back to Ron Miller, Diane Miller's husband, which is Walt Disney's daughter, and how he was CEO at one point and nearly tanked the entire company the first time. So it's just a fascinating read. You must get Disney War. And Fred, thank you. Yes, it is indeed, like in real life, Game of Thrones. Thank you for that. Little says, Disney was the greatest brand in the world. Unless things change, I don't think I'll ever go back. Why would I when it appears I'll feel disappointment and frustration as my main emotions? Very sad. Well, Little, Disney parks are still very much as there has been in terms of as much as there's been added to the experience that kind of bogs things down and makes things a little worse for wear. I do want you to understand that Disney parks are still a place where it is what you make it. It is the mindset you have going into it. Yes, there are struggles. Yes, there are things that I wish didn't exist. Yes, there are things that complicate stuff. But for the most part, that magic is still there to a certain degree. So I don't want you to feel like there's a total blackout here and you need to shut down and turn away. We love Disney here at the Kingdom Report. That's why we dedicate this channel to it. We love what Disney stands for. We love what Disney is. We love what Disney has done for culture and society. and how it's impacted everybody, right? It's made us all feel special. It's an emotional connection we have to a brand. And we decided to get a little journalistic up in here and start to cover Disney from a perspective of holding them accountable too. Because I think when you love something, you also want to hold it accountable and make it the best that it can be, right? That is what the Kingdom Report's all about. So, we're not stopping going to Disney anytime soon. We still love it, but there are plenty of things that are stopping us from going as often. That's for sure. There are things that are definitely making us take a step back and go, you know what? Maybe not right now. You know what? Maybe down the road. You know what? Maybe I'm going to splurge next year instead of this year. Those sorts of things are all relative and all things that you need to consider before going into a trip, but it's all about your mindset. If it's a place you want to go and you know that you're going to have a good time for the most part, again, balance out the value versus what you're paying, and if it's for you still, go ahead, plunk down the cash and go for it. All right, thank you for that. And we move along here. It looks like, as pooped by Anakin Skywalker, great name, Disney can change. They won't lose money. They won't lose money. They won't, though, because they don't want to look bad. They care about their rep than doing the right thing. Well, I mean, you might think that way. You might think that they care more about their rep, but I'll tell you, their rep is tanking recently. Their rep is not doing so hot, and things continue to be quite contentious when it comes to Disney PR. I mean, Disney PR was even calling out here. You guys remember just a couple months ago, WDW News Today was being shouted at by the PR people from Disney, calling them out and saying nasty things about them and the way they cover stuff, and they just really railed against them in a very un-Disney way. The PR team did this. It was something that I know, working at Disney all the years that I did, PR or not, there's sort of a code of conduct that we all understand. You don't treat a guest, or in this fashion, a member of the media, that way ever. You don't act that way. You don't give them more ammo to shoot back at you, which is exactly what they did during that whole debacle. But their PR continues to tank really hard. So caring about their rep, I mean, if this is them caring about their rep, boy, I'd hate to see what happens when they don't, because they continue to do very poorly in that regard. We will see what happens in the future, and if whether or not there is any sort of difference in the way Disney PR is handling things, because as of right now, they are just having so many missteps, in addition to the CFO and the CEO saying terrible things. So, but I appreciate your comment. Thanks for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I also wanted to share with you a little something here that Disney put out, I believe, today. It may have been yesterday, but it just came out within the last 24 hours, that's for sure. And this is a statement coming from different divisions within the Walt Disney Company surrounding all of the controversy as it currently stands. Disney Plus putting out a statement saying, Disney Plus stands by our LGBTQI plus employees, colleagues, families, stories, and fans, and we strongly denounce all legislation that infringes on the basic human rights of people in the community, especially legislation that targets and harms young people and their families. We strive to create a service that reflects the world in which we live, and our hope is to be a source for inclusive, empowering, and authentic stories that unite us in our shared humanity. And then it looks like Disney Parks put out this saying, to all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disney Parks Experiences and Products is committed to creating experiences that support family values for every family and will not stand for discrimination in any form. We oppose any legislation that infringes on basic human rights and stand in solidarity and support our LGBTQIA plus cast, crew, and Imagineers and fans who make their voices heard today and every day. So there you have it. Different divisions of the company putting out these statements in support of the LGBTQIA plus employees within the organization. I'll tell you that Blog Mickey is reporting something fairly new. It came from the New York Times. They say in a report from the New York Times, it looks like leadership in the Disney Parks Experiences and Products division wanted Disney to publicly take a stance on the Don't Say Gay bill, as they're calling it in Florida, but were rejected The report names newly appointed PR chief Jeff Merrill as one of the voices that decided working behind the scenes was a smarter move than taking a public stance. That guidance clearly backfired, and Disney is now in its third week of controversy and apologies, Blog Mickey writes, also saying unnamed leadership from the Disney Parks Experiences and Products division apparently urged Disney to add their name to a long list of companies that were publicly against the Florida bill. Leadership reportedly wanted Disney to sign the human rights campaign letter before Chapek sent a company-wide email in which the CEO said that Disney would not be denouncing the bill. A few days later, Chapek would apologize. And since then, Blog Mickey writes that Disney has taken quite a public stance in opposition to the Don't Say Gay bill and similar legislation in other states. Earlier today, the Disney Parks division was one of the many branches of the company that provided a unified front in support of the LGBTQIA plus community ahead of a scheduled walkout of employees. As always, this is something that is very interesting because you had leaders within the company saying, you should probably say something, you should probably say something. And then it sounds like Chapek thought, I'm not going to be controversial. We're going to do things behind the scenes. We don't need to get political. And this became the most political thing possible for the entire organization. Just completely blew up in his face. And I'll also tell you something else. So in speaking with some of our sources within the Walt Disney Company, there has been a lot of very interesting concerns brought to light, a lot of frustration brought to light from the diversity resource groups within the organization. And they started to share some things with us about exactly what's happening on the inside. And I'll share that quote with you here in just a moment. I'll tell you something more so about, when it comes to the human rights aspect of all of this. I believe Governor Ron DeSantis was one of the people who came out and said, if this is the hill that Disney wants to die on, that's fine, but can we talk about Disney's cozy relationship with China and how they've never denounced anything about China? In fact, they have the most wonderful relationship with China, and they've never done anything to call out China's neglect and human rights violations on a massive scale. That was something that, by the way, I've always thought about as somebody who worked for the organization, who worked for the company. Disney's unbelievably cozy relationship with China over the years. I always used to think, well, wait a second, I thought diversity and inclusion were pillars of what Disney stood for, and I thought that was really important to Disney. How on earth is this relationship standing and so strong with China, and how is Disney just celebrating them all the time and acting like there's no problems, and they've never once come out and just condemned all of the gross human rights violations in that country. So at any rate, it's something that I certainly, over the course of time, used to think about, especially while working there. And as we had all of these initiatives, we had all these diversity and inclusion type events, I used to think, so we're just going to ignore the China in the room? We're just going to ignore that? Okay, got it. All right, so we move along. But, I guess one good thing that came out of this situation is somebody publicly finally said it regarding Disney's relationship with them. It's like, if you're going to be consistent, let's be consistent across the board. Do you really stand for these things or do you not? And that brings me to this quote now that I wanted to share and wanted to make sure that you understood and heard. And this is a Disney leader from within the organization shared this with me, saying that the diversity resource teams have been working extra hard for the cast. There have been so many Zoom calls for the cast just to express their feelings. One had over 1,000 in attendance. Our cast feel that Bob Chapek uses inclusion just as a marketing tool and doesn't really believe in it. During these Zoom calls, cast are asking for him to leave. So, and this has been going on for weeks, by the way. These Zoom calls, all of these different leaders, these executives from these divisions, they've all been stepping up and hosting all of these town halls, all of these Zoom calls, doing their best to try and get everybody sort of on the same page and understanding that, hey, don't worry, we have your back. Hey, don't worry, diversity and inclusion is something that, we've struggled with over the course of time, but we've built huge apparatuses to take care of, and we've built all sorts of resources and created all sorts of platforms for the sake of making you feel comfortable and making you feel like you belong here. Just like we do with our guests, we want you as our employees to feel the same way. These poor leaders of the divisions within the company who clearly, as we saw from Blog Mickey's reporting, as we just heard, It looks like the New York Times is signaling that, in fact, the Disney Parks division, at least, came out and said, you should really say something here because this is going to blow up in your face if you don't. Can't say they didn't try, but there you have it, a quote from our friends here at the Disney Company, and some of our anonymous sources from within definitely sharing their frustration and certainly wanting more out of Disney in terms of action regarding their response to this. So there you have it. In terms of performance of Bob Chapek, we recently took a poll here on the Kingdom Report YouTube channel, and we asked, do you approve of the job Disney CEO Bob Chapek has done since assuming the position? 3% of you said, yes, we do approve of the job that Disney CEO Bob Chapek has done since assuming the position. 12% of you said you're not sure, but 85% of you said no. No. Not at all. So, can't say I'm surprised. It's a very vocal group, very frustrated group of individuals. And, I understand that you guys are all diehards and you are very much friends that have passion in your hearts for the Disney brand. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? I think so. So, at any rate, I appreciate you taking time out to vote in this poll. If you haven't done so already, the poll is still live on the Kingdom Report YouTube channel community page. Go ahead and drop in and leave a click if you feel so inclined. But up next, I want to move on to our next story, and that is the walkouts that have happened. So all of this sort of leading to the walkout discussion. Disney walkouts in several divisions across the organization today. Yes, some were very small, some were more significant. Let's dive right into it and share with you the full story about Disney employee walkouts today. ClickOrlando.com reports the following, saying that even though a small percentage of Walt Disney Company workers participated in a walkout Tuesday, organizers felt they had won a moral victory, with the company issuing a statement denouncing the anti-LGBTQ legislation that sparked employee outrage. Throughout the day, pockets of employees staged demonstrations at various sites across the country, including near Orlando's Walt Disney World and Walt Disney Studios. According to a Disney official, there had been no interruptions in any operations. Disney employed 190,000 workers last October, with roughly three-quarters working in its theme parks division. The debate forced the company into a balancing act between the expectations of a diverse workforce and demands from an increasingly polarized, politicized marketplace. On one side are LGBTQ advocates and Disney employees calling for the walkout in protest of CEO Bob Chapek's slow response in publicly criticizing Florida legislation that opponents dubbed as the Don't Say Gay bill. The legislation awaiting the governor's signature bars instruction of sexual orientation or gender identity in kindergarten through third grade. On the other side are politicians like Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, who accused the entertainment conglomerate of bending to woke politics. Earlier this month, the company decided to temporarily suspend political contributions in Florida. DeSantis, who has been tacking toward the Republican base on culture war issues, is seen as a 2024 presidential hopeful. Union leaders for the tens of thousands of unionized workers at Disney theme parks in Florida and California said they saw no walkout momentum among their members, advising them not to do so because it would defy contractual obligations. Quote, "I don't want to downplay anyone's efforts if someone feels what they are doing is the right way to make an impact," said Eric Clinton, president of Unite Here Local 362, which represents custodians, housekeepers, and other Walt Disney World theme park workers, saying, "We aren't part of that. It would violate our contract if members of our union participated, though we are concerned about the issue, of course," close quote. Evan Power, Leon County's Republican Party chairman, said he believes a strident minority of Disney employees are pushing the issue, and DeSantis has more to gain by taking the side of parents who want more control over education and sexual conversations in early grades at school. In a Tuesday Facebook post, Disney wrote that the company opposes any legislation that infringes on basic human rights and stands in solidarity with LGBTQ employees who, quote, "make their voices heard today and every day," close quote. A half dozen Disney workers gathered Tuesday morning at an Orlando LGBTQ center to write letters in support of queer students. Quote, "You're amazing, you matter, and we care. And "It gets better," they read, next to a drawing of a rainbow. Quote, "We are creators and we felt that we could be creative and productive and write letters of encouragement to LGBTQ youth," said Gabe, a Walt Disney World product development manager who didn't want his last name used for fear of having his privacy invaded. Disney, whose movies and properties shape generations of children around the world, has spoken out several times in recent years about contentious social and political situations. In January 2021, it said it would suspend political donations to lawmakers who voted against certifying President Joe Biden's electoral victory. It also threatened to pull business from Georgia, a favorite of movie and TV studios, following a 2016 anti-gay bill, which was ultimately vetoed by the then governor. Chapek, who became CEO in 2020, has now drawn fire for speaking out about the gender identity bill only after it passed the Florida legislature. Republican lawmakers pushing the Florida legislation argued that parents, not teachers, should be the ones talking to their children about gender issues during their early formative years. The legislation attracted scrutiny from Democrats, including Biden, who called it hateful. It has been sent to DeSantis, who is expected to sign it into law. Chapek has apologized for not coming out more forcefully and publicly against the bill, saying Disney officials worked behind the scenes to stop it. Chapek has also announced a pause to political donations in Florida and support for advocacy groups fighting similar legislation in other states, reiterating those points during a company-wide discussion on Monday. Outside Walt Disney World's property, Disney employee Nicholas Maldonado was a lone protester Tuesday wearing a rainbow flag and holding a sign reading, "Trans rights are human rights," and hashtag Disney do better. Quote, "Where was Chapek when the bill was introduced?" said Maldonado, who had a day off from his merchandising job at an Orlando Disney store, and while disappointed with Chapek's initial response, said he felt Disney leaders were beginning to hear the concerns of the company's workers. Disney has long been influential in Florida politics, tending to support Republicans who have been in control of Tallahassee, the state capital, for 2 decades, but also being more open on social issues, said Patricia Campos Medina, co-director of the Worker Institute at Cornell University, saying, quote, "That's why people felt surprised that they wanted to stay quiet on the issue," close quote. Walkout organizers maintain that withholding political contributions isn't enough. A group calling for the walkout said on its website that until the legislation is repealed, Disney leaders need to stop investments in Florida, including the relocation of 2,000 mostly professional jobs from its California headquarters to Orlando. They also say Disney needs to develop an LGBTQ brand similar to the Onyx Collective, an initiative aimed at developing content by and for people of color. About 20 Disney workers gathered at New York City's Stonewall Inn, birthplace of the gay rights movement, to write letters in support of families affected by the Florida legislation. Jonathan Shutt, a senior product manager for Disney streaming services, said he was aware that not every worker who wanted to participate could do so, and that the company, quote, "just needs to do better." Cynthia Cooley, an enterprise program senior manager at Disney Streaming Services, said there was an unspoken signal among workers who decided to walk out, with participating employees putting a rainbow flag next to their names in the Slack messaging app, saying, quote, "We don't talk about Bruno," she cracked, referring to the catchy song from the Disney movie Encanto. Once again, thank you to clickorlando.com for this story. So there you have it when it comes to the Disney walkouts, and it sounds like there might be more here in the future. There may, in fact, be additional walkouts that we aren't aware of yet, but we are hearing internally that they are planning to continue the pressure of these walkouts across the organization. I want to know, what will be the repercussions of the Disney employee walkout? It sounds like already the executive team and the leaders across the company are sort of acquiescing to not just the demands, but also trying to pacify this demographic of people who are very frustrated, very angry with the response, or I guess maybe lack of response from Disney leadership. Do you think there's going to be repercussions either on Disney employees, or do you think there's going to be repercussions on the company now that Disney employees are starting to walk out in solidarity? I'd love to hear what your perspective is. As always, we do encourage you to keep it respectful in the chat, or if you are leaving comments after the fact on demand. We appreciate you watching, but again, please be respectful and make sure that your thoughts are poised and generous-hearted in kindness. Respect matters. That's for dang sure. But what will be the repercussions of the Disney employee walkout? We do want to hear from you. That is the question for now. And when we come back, we are going to talk about how the Disney leadership team decided to put the big old brakes on doing their big retreat for the sake of trying to handle this mess and just what that means for the near future. You stick around. There's plenty more Kingdom Report. Well, Disney News Talk Live on the Kingdom Report. You get used to saying Kingdom Report Live all the time when you're me. That's for sure. More Disney News Talk Live straight ahead. Disney News Talk Live. As always, thanks for being with us. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. Gosh dang it, what are you waiting for? Make sure that you got that thumbs up button firmly pressed. And if you haven't done so, the notification bell, that matters too. Make sure that you have, in fact, registered yourself on up to all of the updates coming your way from us. If you haven't done so, you are going to be so in the dark. Do you want to be in the dark? You want to be in the know, don't you? You want to understand what's going on. So make sure you're subscribed. We do appreciate it. And as a reminder, you heard me say just before the break, Kingdom Report Live, it's on my mind because this week we return for the first time in 2022. Kingdom Report Live, our studio show, where you can see my ugly mug talking at you, as well as the more beautiful mugs of Garrett Hassel, Tyler Crouch, Katrina Manzone, all coming back to you from our studio in the beautiful Warner Brothers Studios Media District, talking to you all about the Disney Parks news, bringing our perspective, our trusted theme park opinions for you, to share what's going on and to cover all things Disney parks, Disney trips, and beyond, plus all new segments regarding your feedback, your thoughts as well. And if you haven't dropped by our community page on the YouTube channel, the Kingdom Report on YouTube, you should do that. We have all kinds of polls going on, all kinds of questions. Many of those comments will be what we focus on Kingdom Report Live in the near future. So make sure to sound off. As always, your perspective, it does matter. Well, as I told you, that management retreat that Disney leadership was planning, they've canceled it, at least for now, mainly because they've got a huge mess on their hands that they need to take care of. Let's dive into that story right now. The following is courtesy of Yahoo News. They report that as many of its LGBTQ plus employees readied for a full-day walkout on Tuesday, Disney has decided to postpone a management retreat set for next week as it continues efforts to calm internal waters. News of the postponement came as Disney CEO Bob Chapek conducted a town hall meeting for all employees Monday. The exec is continuing to try to put the company on more stable footing after its response to Florida's parental rights bill met with fierce backlash internally and in influential pockets of the talent community. All of the company's three major content suppliers, Marvel, Pixar, and Lucasfilm, have been publicly critical of the company's handling of the situation. During the town hall, Chapek repeated his expression of regret about the company's decision not to take a public stance against the bill, given the large number of its employees it affected. According to one attendee, Chapek conceded that Disney's silence wasn't just about Florida. He agreed that the company should stand up more for the LGBTQ+ community in pursuit of more meaningful and lasting change. The Parental Rights and Education bill has passed the Florida legislature and awaits the signature of Governor Ron DeSantis. Labeled by opponents as the Don't Say Gay bill, the legislation effectively bans discussion or teaching about the LGBTQ+ community and sexual orientation or gender identity in the state's public school system from kindergarten to the third grade. Earlier this month, in an email to employees, Chapek apologized to workers for, quote, letting you down by not being more of an advocate for the LGBTQ+ community. The email came 2 days after the company's annual shareholder meeting, during which Chapek explained that the company had long opposed the Florida bill, but opted to work behind the scenes rather than make a public statement. The week-long mess also elicited criticism from the right as Fox News picked up on the DeSantis administration's portrayal of what they derided as woke Disney, trying to get the state to change its ways. Bob Iger, the former Disney CEO, whose decades-long tenure at the company ended in December, tweeted his opposition to the legislation weeks ago. Chapek is far less publicly political than his predecessor, who once considered a run for the Democratic nomination for president. All Disney employees were invited to attend the town hall on Monday morning, which Deadline was told was part of an ongoing conversation series that began in 2020. It fit into the larger corporate campaign known as Reimagine Tomorrow, which aims to emphasize Disney's commitment to diversity and inclusion. The original town hall event was announced on March the 2nd, and then on Friday was moved to Monday, so people could attend Tuesday's Walkout if they so chose. In lieu of the management retreat, the plan is for the leadership of the media company to go on a listening tour with employees, according to a person familiar with the strategy. A growing number of participants in the retreat were expressing reluctance with pressing ahead given the climate at the company. At another point in the town hall, the company's HR chief addressed the Florida situation and also affirmed that the company would oppose an effort by Texas Governor Greg Abbott on a different front. Abbott issued an order which was blocked by a state judge to have parents investigated for potential child abuse charges if their transgender children receive hormone blockers. In addition to pledging to enlist an outside advisor to guide the company's efforts, Chapek also is creating a company-wide task force led by Studio's Senior Vice President of Global Communications Paul Roeder and Disney Parks Marketing Executive Lisa Beckett. The task force will develop strategy and action plans to engage with LGBTQ+ employees, community partners, and content creators. A roundtable of 8 Disney employees who represented many aspects of the LGBTQ+ community also shared their perspectives during the town hall. The event concluded with a fireside chat from Nadine Smith of Equality Florida and Latondra Newton, Disney's Chief Diversity Officer. Chapek wrapped up the session and thanked all of the participants. Chapek is in the third year of a 3-year contract as CEO that expires next February. Despite the acrimony this month and a rare public clash last summer with an A-list star Scarlett Johansson, the company has been rebuilding after the depths of the pandemic and posted stellar financial results in February for its most recent quarter. The Florida bill hasn't factored into investors' views as of yet, though the company's stock has been languishing near a 52-week low. Once again, a big thanks to Yahoo News for that story. So we hear about how Bob Chapek has just been stepping in it left and right. We hear how he continues to struggle to make things correct again and try and justify his decisions. Here we are. We've got less than a year to see if the board of directors is going to renew his contract as CEO up in February 2023. Tell me, how do you think Bob Chapek has been handling Disney since becoming CEO? Now, I've heard from many people already in our community forums here on the YouTube channel that, hey, profits are up most of the time. He's made some really sweet gains. And perhaps this guy is someone that just might get the nod again because he's good for some cash, good for some cash infusions, and knows how to make a buck. And in the business world, isn't that the most important thing to everybody? But for a company like Disney, a company that is as image conscious as Disney, do you think that all of the recent controversies, all of the recent issues that he's been dealing with, all of the backstage, behind the scenes outbursts that we've been hearing about, it's been reported he's hated that people call him a bean counter. He despises that the Disney fan community thinks so little of him. Let's remind you all that at the Destination D23 event in Orlando, as a matter of fact, kind of ties into one of the stories we were talking about a little bit earlier. When he was at the Bob Iger goodbye dinner, he said he could not make it to Orlando for the Destination D23 event. And we talked about it on, I believe, this broadcast at the time as to just how tone deaf he was. Just how miscalculating that was. It's like, is the team around him also as tone deaf? Is anybody able to persuade him? Because he's already so disliked by, in particular, the Disney Parks fan community, right? This community, probably the most passionate of all of the divisions of fans in the Disney organization. The Disney Parks fan community, this is the rabid fan event, Destination D23. And so the rabid fans were there. If you wanted to try and alter your image, if you wanted to try and smooth things over, make it better, turn things around, wouldn't you move heaven and earth to get there? And you're telling me that this guy, that the Disney CEO, was in LA the night before and couldn't make it to Orlando the next morning? Because I'm sure he has to get on a commercial flight. Maybe they just, maybe there just was no openings and he had to struggle to get through the airport and, he had to check his bags. And no, of course he has his own corporate jet. Of course he has his own exclusive rides. Of course he has everything set up for him. So how he miscalculated on that one, I'll never understand, but he did. And he sent an apology. Oh, I really want to be there. It's one of my favorite events. Oh, please. Okay. Then you would have been there. And if it really mattered to you, you would have shown up and you would have presented and you would have tried your best to alter the course that you're on. So we know that Disney Parks fans have a very skewed view of the man based on many of his actions, right? He's done this to himself. But we want to know, how do you think Bob Chapek has been handling Disney since becoming CEO? From a business sense, do we want to separate him into two different columns as a personality? He is no Bob Iger. The first story we talked about where he clashed with Bob, that's very clear, right? He's nothing like Bob Iger. I guess we have to say last names here because they're both Bobs, right? So he's nothing like Iger. So leaving him in that column, he's a personality, right? So we have a category for personality. We have a category for businessman. So let's ask that question. Let's get specific here. How do you think Bob Chapek has been handling Disney since becoming CEO from a business perspective? Take the personality out of it. Now, I get it. It brings a lot of baggage and it's ruined a lot of things and it's made a tremendous impact in a negative way, that personality has here with all the missteps and miscalculations. And certainly, I call him Captain Charisma for a reason because he has none. There is no stage presence to the man. There is no warmth to the man. He's not that guy. So moving the columns into place, personality, businessman, do you think as a businessman, Bob Chapek has been handling Disney well since becoming CEO or not so much? As always, we love to hear your perspective. If you are with us live, drop it in the live chat. We want to hear from you. And if you happen to be watching on demand, we care about you too. Go ahead and leave a comment for us underneath this very video. As always, your perspective does matter. You stick around because there's plenty more Kingdom Report Disney News Talk live for you next. Disney News Talk Live. You are the best for sticking with us throughout this broadcast. And we asked you just before we saw that beautiful Epcot beacon exactly how you feel Disney CEO Bob Chapek has been doing since taking the reins of the CEO-ship and knowing that he has about a year left on his contract, separating the man of personality from the man that is business. What do you think? And Mike's Adventure says on the P&Ls, profit and loss, he's been doing good overall, trying to recover from the closure in 2020. In terms of PR, he needs to really work on that aspect, like a lot. Yes, Mike. Yes, he does. Amen to that. You got it right. Fred says, what's Eisner up to nowadays? You know, funny you mention that, Fred. So Michael Eisner, who I believe is in his 80s at this point, isn't that wild to think about? I will forever see him as sort of that youthful face that came on Disney Sunday night movies and, you know, helped present things. And yeah, I've always had that image of him in my mind, I think, because that's what I grew up with. But he's in his 80s now. And interesting you bring up Eisner's name. He was spoken to recently by some media outlet. I forget who, but somebody recently flagged him down and talked to him specifically about Bob Chapek as CEO and said, like, how do you think he's doing? You know, is he somebody that you think is rallying and sort of steering the ship of Disney very well? And Michael Eisner said, I think he's doing a fantastic job. You know, profits are up. The stock has done incredibly well during his tenure so far. And then on top of that, he says, you know, I hired the guy. I'm quite proud of what he's become. I think he's going to continue to do great. So I guess in reality, we can thank Michael Eisner for hiring Bob Chapek. So there it is. He's the reason why Bob Chapek exists today. So, but at any rate, I know that what it comes down to is obviously Bob Iger had to have bought off on him and thought he was going to be a tremendous CEO. The board of directors also bought off on him. So a lot of people approved this man becoming CEO. It doesn't just happen overnight, especially for a company like Disney. It doesn't just become something that you go, oh yeah, you want to do this? I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes into a position like this, But it all goes back to Michael Eisner. Very interesting. And as much as I celebrate, revere, and adore what Michael Eisner did for sort of reestablishing Disney, making it a household name again, and really expanding the parks, he was a fan of the parks. There was a lot that Michael did that was outstanding, right? And I think a lot of his legacy is tarnished by what happened at the end. Like I said, he kind of lost his mind at the end. Frank Wells, who was the president of Disney, kept him in check. When Frank passed away unexpectedly due to an accident, Michael really went off the deep end. And I think that affected him in such a personal way. This is just me reading into it. I don't know this for sure, but it sure seems like the course of events led Michael to have kind of a breakdown. I know he had a heart attack during that time. A lot of stress was just added on him. Frank was his Roy Disney, and Michael was Walt. And we haven't really had that combination again. Bob is kind of Iger, that is. I gotta use those last names. Bob Iger has really sort of straddled both lines and tried his best to be Mr. Creative and Mr. Business Sense. He's done a decent job of that. But Michael had such a legacy leading up to those final, I'll say, 2 or 3 years where things got really murky and bad towards the end. A legacy that is rich and wonderful and led to unprecedented new heights for the Disney company, that only because he did that does Disney even exist today. It's a fascinating history. I encourage you to read up on it if you haven't done so already. The Michael Eisner legacy is fascinating. And I go back to the idea of reading the book, Disney War, by James B. Stewart, the New York Times author. If you have not read that, make it something that you put on your reading list this year. You will be fascinated by the story. You'll be fascinated by the Shakespearean attitude of it all and how Michael Eisner went to war with Roy Disney, the nephew, over the company. And we all know how that turned out. So, but we don't have a Disney anymore, and we don't have a Disney namesake involved in the company. Now it really is up to the bureaucrats, right? It really is up to the senior leadership that they put in place to run the organization, and we have to hope for the best. So that is what Eisner's up to nowadays, Fred. So thank you so much for sharing. Nico says, don't forget that Rhodey made it to both Pandora and DCA openings on the same day. You got that right. Great point. Yes, Joe Rhodey, the famed Imagineer who's since retired, he did make it to the Pandora world of Avatar at Animal Kingdom, as well as Disney California Adventure. I believe that was for the Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout attraction, right? I think he had a hand in both, designing completely Pandora and then overseeing the retheming of Tower of Terror into Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. So you got that right, and that's a perfect example where Bob Chapek is saying, oh, well, I'm at a party the night before in California. I just can't make it to Orlando. Yeah. Nice excuse, bud. Thank you, Nico, for that. Chief says, yeah, exactly, Mike. We have to consider Iger left Chapek all of his financial burdens. Certainly, I think you're talking about a lot of the big purchases, a lot of the, he acquired so much IP, and a lot of those things still need to, in a way, be paid off. There are different aspects to those major purchases that still are sucking money out of the organization for the sake of running them. So you're absolutely right with that one, Chief. Thank you for that. As pooped on by Anakin Skywalker says, what if Eisner came back as CEO of Disney? In his wisdom of 80 plus years old at this point, I don't know if he would have the stamina or the heart for it. I think that's a chapter of his life that he's done with. He's moved on. And I don't know how long he would last. He's already up there. I think he's definitely involved with a lot of investments in organizations and stuff like that. But I don't think he's too active nowadays in a day-to-day operation. No doubt he's enjoying his life, but I don't know what would happen. And I will say that as Chapek was taking over and Iger was on his way out in that sort of final goodbye in the last week of December, I do know that at that point, I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, man, what if Eisner resurfaced all of a sudden in Disney leadership? Like, wouldn't that just be, because this is already Shakespearean. Wouldn't that be something to have Eisner, sort of make his presence known again in the company and come walking in one more time? And I don't know, it's might be wishful thinking just for the sake of drama, but I think that would be fascinating. So anyway, I don't think he's interested, but yeah, certainly something that's fun to think about. That's for sure. Chief says, I still remember the Avengers campus grand opening and how Chapek was just in the dark. It definitely felt cold. And that's the thing we keep hearing about Chapek too. And anytime you watch any sort of interviews he does or any sort of speeches he gives, boy, that guy just seems uncomfortable in his own skin. And I know that public speaking is hard for folks and public speaking is not for everybody. It's one of the biggest fears in the world. But when you are the face of the biggest media company in the world, you better get comfortable. You better get good at being in front of people and sort of expressing gratitude and warmth. Because if you're not good at that, that's not something you can fake. That isn't something that you can be artificial about. People will see right through it. And unfortunately, he tries to be artificial about it. He tries to put on his best face and people do see right through it. So yeah, it feels cold because it is cold. That's for sure. Alicia says, I feel like they need someone who won't so blatantly make it about the money. Disney has always been about the money, but it never really felt that way as a guest. Makes it feel less magical. Alicia, I feel the same way. It's now gotten to a point where it seems as though everything's nickel and dime, right? If you really want to have a good experience at Disney, whether it's Disney World, Disneyland, you need to be willing to pay for that experience, right? Now, I recall a time where you could go to a Disney resort and it could be a value resort, right? The cheapest of resorts. You could go stay at Disney's All-Star Sports and still have all kinds of perks. Still have all of those extra benefits. You got Magical Express from the airport to your hotel, complimentary. You got extra magic hours in the morning and at night because you were a resort guest. There were these extra perks woven into what you did because you stayed at the resort. But now everything is so much more segmented when it comes to nickel and diming and upcharging. And it's like you can't get from one category to another without a paywall now. And things that used to be free, you now pay for. And after a while, that really does bog you down, doesn't it? I mean, after a while, you do feel like this is less magical because now I'm having to pay for all of these things that they used to give me. Do they not appreciate me as much? Because that's how it feels, right? Like, do they not appreciate me as a guest, as a consumer? Because now they're charging me for all this stuff that they used to provide me as they said it was complimentary, right? Compliments of them. Well, no more compliments, no more kindness, right? No more gratitude for me being there. Now it's, hey, we're just busy. We're trying to manage demand. Give us your credit card if you want access to that. And that's kind of how it feels, right? It's unfortunate. That's for sure. Yeah, all right. And JP says, exactly. If you ever saw Iger at any Disney event, he always looked thrilled to be there. His love for Disney is visible. Chapek, in the other hand, couldn't care less about Disney's legacy. I'll tell you that Bob Iger seemed like a kid in a candy store sometimes when we would see him in the Disney theme parks. When he was there and getting to roll around on his own, and I didn't see very much of an entourage with him, which, for somebody at his level, for somebody that certainly has as much on his plate as he does, to not have an entourage around him was always really fascinating to me because I thought, man, he's so accessible. You can just walk right up to him and talk. I remember one day in particular, I believe it was Disney California Adventures, kind of like the re-grand opening. It was probably, I think it was 2012. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was 2012. It was the rededication California Adventure, his version of California Adventure, the fixing of the Michael Eisner cheap edition of California Adventure. And I was I was hosting a radio broadcast on the streets of Hollywoodland, and I was sitting there with the station, and I was talking to a couple of the DJs from that station, and I saw Bob come walking down the street. And what was interesting was all this media that I was sitting around didn't even realize it was him. And I think it's because he's so unassuming. He's a tall guy in person, by the way, but he was walking down the street. He had his cardigan on. He just seemed very unassuming. And as he was walking down the street, he was looking at all of the signage in front of each media outlet, seeing where everybody was from. And I remember him walking over to a table nearby and introducing himself and saying, "Hi, I'm Bob Iger." And believe it or not, the table outside of the Disney representative that was with them, the table of radio hosts that I believe were like from Minnesota or something like that, they were shocked that it was him because they didn't recognize him on site, I should say. And so he reached out, shook their hand, and said, do you guys have a weather person? And they said, yeah, we have a local station that does our weather. And he goes, funny story. He goes, I set out to be a weatherman. That was all I really wanted to do. And he goes, and now I find myself here. And he goes, isn't life grand? And he looked around like he was just so happy and so enthused to be in the spot that he was in. And, it is true. That was all he wanted to do. He went to school to be a weatherman on TV. That was what he wanted to do. And through all these twists of fate, he moved himself into leadership positions and became president of ABC at one point. I mean, he did everything at the Disney company, but just wanted to be a weatherman. And still, I think, to this day, kind of always wanted to just be a weatherman, and might still be in his heart a little bit. But he was somebody that I witnessed firsthand come up and say, isn't life grand? You just never know what's going to happen. And he just giggled like a kid. He just seemed happy to be there, loved being in the park. So you're absolutely right, JP. That does remind me of sort of that story and seeing him there. And of course, every time he visited Disneyland or Disney World, he was on rides like everybody else, having a great time. He brought his kids, his wife, Willow Bay. That's her name. Isn't that a great name? Willow Bay. His wife, Willow Bay, was with him. And they had the time of their lives. They really enjoyed being in the parks. Whereas Chapek always has an entourage around him anytime I've seen him in the parks. And he's not there very often, but when he is, he has an entourage. And I've never seen him on a ride. I've never seen him truly enjoying himself in the parks. I've seen him when the cameras are on and he's smiling. But as soon as those cameras are off, you can tell a lot about a person when the cameras go off. Now, you don't have to be smiling all the time, but you can get a sense of somebody's general demeanor. I have to tell you, every time I've seen the cameras go off on him, he looks like he's put out for just being there because he's in the parks. I mean, he did a lot of press while I was there for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and the kickoff of that. And so he was there constantly and up on the platforms and doing all kinds of TV shots and doing all sorts of interviews and would really try and pump out the enthusiasm when he was on camera. And the moment it was over, it was like, get me the hell out of here. I need, I need, a scotch and I need my limo, pull it around. I need to get out. And it was really unfortunate to see because it was the polar opposite of everything I had experienced with Bob Iger. So yes, they are two different people. That's for sure. I appreciate you sharing. Bobby says, I feel like he's more like Bob Paycheck instead of the leader Disney needs. Yeah, I've heard that one before. That's for sure. Justina says, paid lightning lanes is the thing I hate him for the most. Yeah, I know. Lightning lanes obviously here to stay, and we've talked about it a lot on this channel, how a lot of the times that we are witnessing in the apps, along with Disney's own time cues on their billboards, in front of their attractions, are just completely wrong. For the sake of, we believe at this point, and many other Disney fan media outlets are starting to beat the same drum after witnessing it over and over again. We think at this point that they are inflating times on the Genie app, as well as the Disneyland app, as well as the My Disney Experience app, and then even on much of the signage you see outside for the sake of trying to push people to buy Lightning Lane, which is crazy to me that we've gotten to this point. But we've recommended over and over again, don't buy Lightning Lane. Don't. Go wait in line. Oftentimes, the wait time posted, the wait time you see on the app is nowhere near the reality. Go see for yourself. Now, if there are those bigger rides like Rise of the Resistance or Radiator Springs Racers, you might want to invest in the Lightning Lane option just because those always have really ridiculous wait times, and you are going to wait an hour plus for those because that's been tradition from their inception. But for the smaller rides and for the rides that are not considered mega e-tickets like those, you might just want to wait in line and not plunk down the $20 for all of the rides, or $15 out at Disney World. So thank you for that, Justina. Lori Jean says, Maynard, he is retired next week, Wade. For those who don't know, Maynard is a Disneyland Resort cast member, been there for decades, and is quite possibly one of the most entertaining Disneyland cast members. A good friend of mine, believe it or not, somebody who I have always adored, someone that I have always looked to as sort of a Disney Yoda because he always felt the magic. There are some, including many in Disney leadership, that felt like he became the show too often while working attractions, especially things like the Tiki Room, the Jungle Cruise, Haunted Mansion. But I have to tell you, every time I was present and Maynard was hosting any sort of attraction, it was an outstanding experience. He made it so much more fun, so much more hilarious. He really got into the role to the point that I would like to see more cast members try and live out that role. That's what they're there to do. But I know many people also take the stance of like, oh, he interferes with the show. Oh, he gets too involved. I think he's learned how to balance it over the years, at least, in the last couple. And he's certainly somebody that will be missed at Disneyland. It's interesting that he's picking now to retire. I think that might also be reminiscent of what has been going on and how cast morale might be feeling. I'm not going to project that onto him or put words in his mouth because he could just be tired and ready for a next chapter, ready to do something else. But certainly he has been a pillar of the Disneyland cast experience for decades, and an absolute joy. He has quite the following online about this famed cast member. He's somebody that we will all miss at the Disneyland Resort. Thanks for bringing that up, Lori Jean. I appreciate it. All right. And we'll take one more. Here we go. Let's see. D says, what a heartwarming story about Bob Iger. Yeah, it was fun to witness. I have a couple other stories I'll share at a later time, but yeah, he definitely is someone that walked the walk an awful lot. And, I do question some of his business decisions over time and some of the things that he's done as CEO, but for the most part, as a man, he's a very decent human being. Nico says, Chapek is allergic to fun. That comment stands as is. Very good. Fred says, Chapek probably considers being in the parks to be a low-rent activity. Not going to put words in his mouth either, but maybe you're right. I mean, based on what I've seen, yeah, he kind of has that aura to him when he's in the parks. True Sayer says, I understand trying to make up for the shutdown, but firing tons of people while giving themselves bonuses isn't the way to do it. Amen, True Sayer. Amen. I completely feel the same way. You want to talk about terrible optics. So, we covered it on Kingdom Report Live, our live studio show at the time when it happened, as to just how terrible it looked and just how disrespectful it seemed of the cast member base, especially in the middle of a pandemic where nobody knew what was going to happen next and nobody had any idea where their next paycheck was going to come from and how they were going to survive. And then they did that. Yeah. So Truth Sayer, great point. Thank you for that. All right. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with me here tonight. I appreciate you dropping in for a very special edition of Disney News Talk Live. Wanted to cover all of these very interesting things, and no doubt lots of controversy, lots of crazy going on over at the Walt Disney Company corporate side. Definitely wanted to touch on that as well as the walkouts this week and discuss just a little bit about what's been happening and what you need to be up to date on, especially when it comes to Bob Iger versus Bob Chapek. My goodness, still something that I'm a little surprised by, but at the same time, I knew it deep down in my gut there was a problem. I could just sense it. Hey, before we get out of here, as a big old reminder, you get yourself your very own Kingdom Report mug by leaving a comment underneath this video. Just after the live video ends, you can leave a comment underneath this video on our YouTube channel. Leave the phrase that pays, Disney Parks Magic. That's Disney Parks Magic as the comment underneath this video after the live video post you have between now and Thursday morning, the 24th at 8 a.m. Pacific time, in which to leave that comment. If you are the winner, we will reach out to you and say, hey, give us a color and tell us where we are sending this bad boy, because you will be sipping a little bit of magic out of this Kingdom Report mug. Disney Parks Magic is the phrase that pays this week. All right, my friends. Again, thanks so much for being a part of the broadcast. And don't forget, this Saturday, the big return of Kingdom Report Live, coming to you at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, right here on our YouTube channel or on Facebook Live. Do not miss the broadcast. Do not miss our big return for 2022. It has been a long time coming, and due to a series of family medical issues, both between myself and Tyler and Katrina, we have not been able to come together at any point in the last 3 months. That is how severe and drastic things have been, not just for them, but for myself. And it is so great to finally be able to come together once again and have a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, talk some Disney, and enjoy one another's company once again. And of course, you are a big part of that magic. So make sure you are a part of Kingdom Report Live this Saturday, again, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Kingdom Report YouTube channel and the Kingdom Report on Facebook Live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a great pleasure, and I hope that I have done a worthwhile job for you here today. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already, and notification bell for all the Disney news updates. You want to be clicking that too. For the Kingdom Report, I'm Wade Heath. We'll see you next time for another installment of Disney News Talk Live.